In this Taking the Biz revision tutorial, we're going to be examining how an economy works using a model known as the circular flow of income. Now, this is a very basic model. In reality, economies are very sophisticated, very nuanced, but we're going to show a very basic model that's going to give us a very fundamental understanding about how an economic system works. So economies work by funds flowing through them, and those funds pass between different actors or different agents in the economy. And two of the big agents that are just fundamental to the workings of an economy are households and firms. And in this model, we can see how funds flow between those two different agents and what they provide for each other or what they sell to each other. So households, imagine households possess all of the money in the economy. So at any one time, all of the money in the economy is in the possession of households. But they're going to transfer that money to firms because they're going to want to buy goods and services from them. So they're going to want to buy groceries, they're going to want to buy electronics, cosmetics, sporting goods. And so they will take all of the funds that they hold, pass it all to firms in return for goods and services. So firms benefit from the fruits of their labour, everything that they've manufactured and produced, they transfer to households in return for funds. But that money then flows back the other way because firms also purchase things from households. First of all, there'll be some householders who are perhaps wealthy enough that they will own shares in organisations and they will get paid an annual dividend. And so some of the money that firms possess gets transferred back to people in households through the payment of dividends. Similarly, some household owners will be wealthy enough that they can actually rent land to firms for them to house their factories, their shops, their offices, whatever premises they may possess. And so firms will pay private household owners to rent that land from them. But perhaps the biggest way that firms transfer money in an economy back to households is through households selling their labour to business organisations. So households will transfer money to firms to buy goods and services from them, but firms will send a lot of that back to households because they will hire workers from those households to come and do jobs in their organisation. And so that money that firms have accrued from households gets transferred back again. Now, if the model was as basic as that, then the economy would maintain its size throughout time. Let's imagine an economy had £1 million inside it. If that £1 million was all in the possession of households, and then it was all transferred to firms to buy goods and services from them, but then firms transferred that £1 million back to households through payments for land in the form of rent, through dividends to shareholders and through wages to employees, then an economy would be the same size. It would constantly have £1 million circulating throughout it. But economies don't always stay the same size. And that's because there can be additional funds injected into an economy, but there can also be ways that funds can leak out of an economy. So we'll start with the leakages first of all. And there's three main ways that funds can leave or exit or leak out of an economy. The first is that when workers are paid wages, or when shareholders are paid dividends, or when landowners are paid rent by firms, rather than transferring all of that back to firms to purchase more goods and services, they may decide to save some. And so rather than transferring it back to firms, they transplant it into bank accounts or other kind of savings mechanisms. And so some of those funds that were circulating and moving around the economy have now sat to one side because households have decided to save some of their money. Another way that it leaks out of the economy is that the government gets involved as a third agent in the economy. And so they will tax workers on their incomes. And so not all of the money that households pass to firms gets passed back in wages because some gets apportioned to the government through the payment of different taxes. Finally, not all of the funds that households receive from firms get spent on domestically produced goods and services. Because we are partial to lots of goods and services that may be imported into the UK economy, some of our funds will get paid to overseas organisations, thus leaving the UK economy and being transferred overseas. So we can see that we've got three different ways that funds can leak out of the UK economy. And if all we had was leakages in the UK economy, then funds would gradually seep out of the UK's flow of money until we didn't have any funds left. Fortunately, we've got ways of injecting funds back into the UK economy, hopefully to balance out what might be leaking from it. So our first injection into the UK economy is through firms investing money into new equipment, machinery, technology, bringing money, and potentially those might be overseas organisations moving to the UK and injecting funds into the UK economy. We've also got injections back into the UK economy from government spending. So when some funds leak out of our economy through taxation, some of that, maybe all of that, maybe even more than the amount we've accrued through taxation, gets injected back into the UK economy through government expenditure initiatives, such as spending on schools, spending on hospitals, maybe road or other infrastructure, products and services that the government provides for the nation injects funds back into the UK economy. Final way that we can inject money into the UK economy is that as well as being great purchasers of imported goods and services, the UK also has goods and services that it exports to foreign economies. So we have excess goods and services that we produce that we can then sell on to overseas nations and foreign economies and bring those funds back to the UK. So we've got those three different ways that funds can be injected back into the UK. Now here's how this little model links to economic growth and economic development. Because if there's a balance between the funds leaking out of our economy and the funds that are injected in, then our economy will remain in equilibrium. It will remain the same size. So the size of our economy will remain static over time. Unfortunately, if the size of the leakages from the UK economy outweigh the size of the injections, then our economy will decline or shrink in size. But if we experience a scenario where the injections into the UK economy are actually greater than the value of the funds leaking from the UK economy, then we will find that we will have a growing economy. Our economy will develop in size, theoretically making the people within the UK economy more prosperous. So it's a very crude model, very basic model, but it allows us as business students to grasp a very basic understanding of how the UK economic system works. It is crucial to understand the role that households and firms play in transferring goods and services and transferring labour and dividends and land to each other, to understand that those funds can move around the economy, but occasionally some will leak out on savings and taxes and imports, but that hopefully will be balanced by the fact that some will be injected back in through investment, government spending, and us exporting goods and services overseas. And that just shows us how an economy can grow and decline in size over time, depending on the size of injections versus the size of leakages. Very simple video, basic understanding of how the economy works. Good luck with your ongoing revision. Keep on taking the biz.